Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited that you're with us on 33 Founders today because I'm here with Brad Hargreaves, the founder and CEO of Common. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really excited to have you introduce us to this new concept you guys are working on at Common with co-living because you have a very special touch.
Thank you. So I love to start by really describing how I got into this because it's kind of a unique story and relates a lot to my time at General Assembly. So before I started Common, I co-founded a company called General Assembly that really teaches fundamental skills in technology, business, and design. And at any given time, we'll have 5,000 to 6,000 students in major cities in the U.S. going through our courses and learning things like web development, user experience design, and digital marketing. And one of the biggest challenges we faced while I was growing General Assembly was, where do our students live? Many of them would move to major cities like New York, LA, Chicago, DC, San Francisco, and they would really struggle to find a flexible, affordable, community-driven place to live while they were in these major cities. And many of them either couldn't qualify for leases or didn't want to commit to the 1 to 2 year minimum that most landlords require. So they would end up going onto Craigslist and just playing the lottery there and hoping they ended up with some friendly strangers and not in a difficult rooming situation with strangers they met on the internet. So it was clearly not a great customer experience for our students. And so I started thinking about ways that we could make a better product and make a better experience, and really started looking at co-living as a model. Co-living is the idea of several people with common interests sharing an apartment. And we looked at it and said, as long as we keep a couple of strong rules in place and provide a service layer that removes some of the big disputes that roommates have. For instance, we only have one person to a room, so we want everyone to have some private space. And we also provide a set of shared supplies and services. For instance, we clean all the spaces once a week. We provide a set of common kitchen and bathroom supplies, the type of things that roommates often fight over who's going to buy. So we provide this service layer, and then we work with real estate investors in partnership with those investors. And then we have actual space that we control that we can then offer to our membership community. Community is also a really key part of what we do on that note. And kind of getting our members to interact with each other and be more than just kind of residents of a building. But for instance, to eat dinner together, I think is an incredibly important part of what we're building. And our first building, which we're opening in Brooklyn in fall of 2015 this year, we'll have a dining hall in the garden floor, so a place where the people who live in the building can actually come down, cook, and eat together. So little things like that that actually innovate on the kind of traditional designs of these buildings are things that I think are going to be really compelling.
That's what really drew me to Common, Brad, was that, when you typically hear co-living after college, you're like, I don't know if I'm interested in that. But everything that you've said about Common is so appealing. I want to be a part of that community. I want to know, what the design is going to look like. What's it going to be like when I'm having dinner with people that are likely going to be very similar to me? And it's a great way to make friends. Yep. Why were those traits so crucial for you?
Well, I think I looked at the experience that I would want and the experience that other people in the General Assembly community, for instance, would want. And, rather than doing a lot of the things that co-living spaces had been doing for a long time, like, putting 3 or 4 people in a bedroom together, I looked at it and said, how do I create an offering that would be appealing to someone who is maybe even a little bit older than a recent college grad, who wanted to move to one of these major cities and take a new job or go through an accelerator program or go through an educational program like General Assembly, but doesn't just want a room with strangers they met on Craigslist. So how do you really look at every aspect of that product and that customer experience and say, how do we make that better? And for a lot of reasons, no one has been really doing that in residential real estate. And we look at this and say, hey, we have the resources and we have the pipeline to really rethink this from the actual sticks and bricks of the real estate all the way to the community and the rules and the governance and how we want people to interact with each other. So we're actually in a really fortunate place in terms of our ability to help build and construct what this is going to be. And I think it's an opportunity we should take.
As you talk about building it from the ground up, you were just saying before that you're really in the thick of it right now, especially with your first space launching in October. What's your typical day like?
Well, I would say I get up at 7:30 every morning. I go biking about 8 miles in the morning, and then always have a breakfast meeting every morning.
I love that.
I do that because it's the only thing that's going to get me up in the mornings if I actually know I have to meet someone somewhere, and that's the only way I actually have breakfast as well. And maybe that's an entrepreneur I've gotten to know. Maybe that's someone I'm potentially looking to hire. Maybe that's a potential developer partner. And from there, I'm really in meetings with the team, understanding our pipeline of new properties, maybe meeting with a couple of our new community partners, interviewing someone for a new role. It's really just about talking to people and building relationships all day long. Then obviously there's the financial aspect of this as well. We want to make this a sustainable business, not just a social experiment. And a big part of that is about making sure that we know our economics and we have the right people on the team that are going to be good stewards of the business. So that's a big thing I'm hiring for as well.
I know you guys are hiring, and I love that you call them a product manager of space.
Yes.
So aside from the work they'll be doing on Mars, I want to talk about the work they'll be doing on Earth.
I guess it would mean a very different thing if I were Elon Musk. Have a product manager of space.
Very true. We should suggest you do that. When it comes to the spaces that you guys are designing, can you give us a glimpse into what your first location in Brooklyn is going to look like?
Absolutely. So our first location is going to have 19 rooms that are organized into a number of suites of several bedrooms each. They're kind of centered around a common kitchen and several bathrooms. So we try not to have more than 2 people to a bathroom either. That's just
Very
another
good.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just some co-living spaces have 10 people to a bathroom, and I think that's a little wild. So we try to keep it to 2, no more than 3 people per bathroom. And really, when you look at the space, it's about really getting people in these shared and common spaces. So we're fortunate in that we can use every square foot of the space that we're inhabiting. That includes the roof, that includes the backyard. There's a really nice backyard garden. And there's a large common space on the garden floor that we're using as working space during the day. I know that a number of the people in our community are going to be freelancers who don't necessarily have an office they can go to on a regular basis. So having a place they can go, even if it's still within the building, so they're not rolling out of bed and right onto their desk and starting work. But there's some separation between work and life is incredibly important. And that space is going to be a working space during the day and a dining hall in the evening, which I think is a great contrast between work and community.
So are those 19 rooms already filled?
So we haven't started taking applications yet.
They're going to
We
fill
will start.
in a second.
Well, we'll start taking applications in September, and we want to be able to show the space off before we actually start taking applications for the rooms, because right now it's a little weird to ask someone to commit because they can't really see the space they're committing to yet. It's still under construction. So once we're a little bit further along with that process in September, then we will start taking applications.
Great. You guys recently announced your Series A investment, which is led by Maveron, and you have a lot of ties there because you worked as a venture partner there. They invested in the team at General Assembly. And one of the things you mentioned about their work is how they're really great at being there for the great times and also for the bad times. What stands out to you about their commitment to their entrepreneurs?
Well, Maveron is just a really unique firm for a couple of reasons, and that's why, first and foremost, we took their money at General Assembly, and they were the first investor in General Assembly. Why I spent some time there after my time at General Assembly as a venture partner, and then why I've decided to work with them again here at Common. One is they know what they do. They know what they do well. There are a lot of venture firms that do a lot of different things. Maveron is solely focused on building consumer brands, and that's really special. So Maveron was founded by Howard Schultz and Dan Levitan, two of the people involved very early on in Starbucks, and Howard is still the CEO of Starbucks. So they have that DNA of being able to build great consumer brands. And they're also just like very genuine, down-to-earth people. There are a lot of VCs, and just, I've seen this in my experience. There are a lot of VCs that don't always say what they mean, but I've found that the Maveron team is incredibly earnest, and when you're taking someone onto your board of directors, you're effectively beholden to them in some ways. You're taking their money. You are, I don't want to say their employee because you're not, but you certainly have an obligation to them. And I guess after the success of General Assembly, I really wanted to make sure that my partner in this business was someone I really liked and respected. And Jason Stouffer, who is the partner who's on General Assembly's board, is also joining Common's board. So I'm excited to have him a part of it.
That's really special, and that's something that Rebecca Caden had shared with me from Maveron, is that one of their favorite things is to continually invest in entrepreneurs in each of their new endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, Maveron is very entrepreneur-centric in that, rather than chasing deals, they typically find entrepreneurs who they like and they partner with, and they do right by those entrepreneurs. And and then I'm excited to involve them in what I'm doing now as my second venture with them.
When it came to raising the round, you shared previously that you guys were oversubscribed within 2 weeks of getting the term sheet, and I really admired your take on why you didn't want to overcapitalize, especially in the midst of Series A rounds and seed rounds getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Why was that important to you?
Well, first of all, it's always hard to say no. And as an entrepreneur, you're not necessarily used to saying no when people offer you money. But I was oversubscribed really quickly on the round. I didn't want to raise too much for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't want the valuation to get out of control. I really wanted it to have a reasonably priced round, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is we were pre-launch, and we wanted to make sure we had time to really prove out what we needed to prove out. And two is, a lot of the people who are investing in this round are my friends. They're people who will do a lot and really go to bat for Common and what we're doing, and I want them to be properly incentivized to do that. And part of that is getting them into our company at a relatively reasonable price. So you see a lot of rounds get bid up these days, and I just really didn't want that to happen for this round. I also didn't really want to run a process. A lot of entrepreneurs talk about running a process, basically going out and getting term sheets from a lot of investors and then fostering a bidding war, and that's how you get a lot of the crazy valuations. I did not want to spend my time doing that. I did not think that was a good use of my time. I wanted to take money at a valuation that myself and our investors perceived as reasonable, and rather than spending 2 or 3 months of my time going out and collecting term sheets, I would much rather spend that time into building a great product, finding properties, building relationships with partners. So I decided not to run a process.
I love it. I want to shift gears for a couple of minutes and chat about your journey as a founder. You mentioned before you're co-founder of General Assembly. How does it feel from 2011 to where the company is today and the enormous impact that you guys have made?
It's incredible. It's still hard to totally internalize it, especially when even in places where that I would hardly expect. I go to a friend's wedding, and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, you founded General Assembly," and it's very, very weird. It's kind of amazing. We've gotten uh, thousands of students, if not tens of thousands at this point, connected with work that they love, and we've added a lot of skills to the repertoire in the meantime. So I don't know. It's gone beyond my wildest expectations of where it could be, and I just feel incredibly fortunate that we were on the right side of some big trends and we executed against them. Obviously, my co-founder and one of my best friends, Jake Schwartz, is still the CEO over there. My other co-founder and great friend, Matt Breimer, is still there as well on the team. So I love those guys, and still talk to them pretty much every week.
That's great. I mean, to just think of the magnitude of 14 cities, 4 continents, and then to know that you're the reason that someone's getting a job, that must be pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. Obviously, GA it itself is an amazing thing, but I think it's beyond any one of us at this point. There are over 500 awesome people who work for GA, and they're the ones doing the work now, not me. So it's a lot of people are in that mix, and I'm super humbling what it's been able to do, and the team that's been assembled there.
Oh, I love the way you said that it's beyond the founders. Would you say that's the time that a startup really grows up, when it's that massive team that's producing the outcomes?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I like to think, and I think the society has put a particular emphasis on the founders that were there from the beginning. But I kind of think that companies have different founders at different stages, because a company, I think, really, even a company that kind of is going up and to the right exponentially, like General Assembly, still has different founders, quote unquote, at different stages, different people who come into the company, take various aspects of the company on, own it, drive it to the next level. So I mean, for instance, we had an amazing president and COO join earlier this year, a guy, Scott Kirkpatrick, who came from the Princeton Review. He's absolutely a founder of this stage of the business. Was he there at the beginning? No, absolutely not. But GA is a different entity now. It's a different beast. And, I think businesses have, founders at every stage.
I love that. So well said, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Compare and contrast Brad Hargreaves, who started General Assembly in 2011, to the Brad I'm sitting with today. How have you evolved on this journey?
Oh, my God. That's an intense question. A very smart person once told me that it's never as good as it seems, nor as bad. And I think as an entrepreneur, you really have to own that, especially if you are going to be a serial or career entrepreneur. There will be really, really good times. There will be really bad times. And you have to tell yourself in the good times that it is not as good as it seems. And you have to tell yourself in the bad times that it is not as bad as it seems. And I was not particularly good at that when I started GA. And GA, obviously, as with any company, has had a huge number of ups and downs and sideways and whatnot, that you just get better at telling yourself that and believing it when you say it to yourself. And I think you make better decisions the better you get at convincing yourself that that is true. That in the good times, it will get bad again, and in the bad times, it will get good again. And just because as an entrepreneur, especially as now a solo founder, you're not really, there's nothing really cushioning the ups and downs that you face.
What's it like being a solo founder, having come from having 3 co-founders?
Well, it's my company before General Assembly. I had 4 co-founders. Wow. So
it's like the Lone Ranger now.
Yeah, so it's certainly different. I wouldn't say I went into this determined to not have a co-founder. I would say my definition, as I kind of said earlier, of what a founder is has changed, and the idea that a founder, like, what is a founder? I happen to get approached by a wonderful fund with a check before I found a real partner in this business. So by that traditional definition, I do not and will never have a co-founder. By another definition, I mean, I have some amazing executives on my team who help me every single day. And, I mean, our CFO, Simon, used to be a managing director at Goldman Sachs Capital Markets, and is on the board of Bank Leumi, and he's just an incredible financial mind. Given that I come from more of a product perspective, it's great to have someone who really understands financial transactions and real estate in the mix, because that's not my background. And what we're doing absolutely requires a lot of diligence on the financial side, to make sure we don't get in over our heads. So having someone like that on the team is incredible. So I don't really feel like I'm at it by myself. So I think it becomes, when you're technically the only co-founder, I think it just becomes all the more important very early on to add really smart people to your team.
I love that, and it lends to a recent blog post that you shared that founders, and I guess you could really now apply it to any leader in a company, should know what they do best and then fill in the gaps with people that they don't. You mentioned product is your thing. What do you identify as your strengths, as well as the things that you just get up in the morning and you can't wait to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say product marketing and the intersection of those two things is really what I love to focus on and what I like to do. I think I'm a good manager. I have managed a lot of people at General Assembly, and am really enjoying building a team here, and kind of putting that team together and putting all the right pieces in place that are going to play the right roles. I really enjoy. I am not a finance person. I can play a finance person on television, but I am not a finance person, and I have to keep telling myself that, because I think one of the worst things founders can do is convince themselves that they understand something they don't. So for me, a lot of it has been like adding the right real estate and finance expertise to the team, to keep us honest.
When it comes to growing your team, what are the essential traits that you look for?
So I look for a couple of things. First and foremost, I look for self-awareness.
No
Self-awareness
pressure.
is, well, I mean, I think look, everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses. It's just what I was saying before. Someone who understands those things is going to be far more effective and get themselves and the company in far less trouble than someone who doesn't. So I am pretty liberal when it comes to being open to various strengths and various weaknesses of the people on my team. I in fact look at it as it's good to have a diversity of strengths and weaknesses, but everyone has to be aware of theirs. And if you're not aware, I think it's only a matter of time before you will be made aware. And it's better if that doesn't happen while you're at a startup. So it's, I think self-awareness is a big thing that I'm always looking for. Obviously, humility is related to that, and is incredibly important. I think looking at creativity and diligence and other aspects of these specific roles, obviously it comes down to really what is the role looking for, and kind of what specific traits or skill sets are going to make the role really sing. And I think outside of self-awareness, I can think of very few things that are universally applicable to every role. But I think without self-awareness, it's really hard to succeed anywhere.
I love it. I feel like everything you say, I just want to write down. It's undeniable, Brad, that you're a problem solver. First, you guys tackle education, now housing. Huge challenges. How do you view getting inside of a challenge? Because at the beginning, you mentioned the early days of Common was really discovering and learning what you needed to build a different, but also applicable and comforting, exciting solution.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the greatest challenge in an entrepreneur's journey is kind of how do you balance being incremental and being visionary. And I really think that when you're tackling one of these incredibly complex problems like education, like housing, you kind of both have to own the big vision. So, what is the giant macro problem you're solving? What does this look like in 20 years? You have to own that, but at the same time, be incredibly incremental and almost scientific with how you take individual steps toward that vision. Because you see some entrepreneurs that are entirely incremental, but don't necessarily have the big vision. If you don't have the big vision, then you're just optimizing toward nothing. And if you just have the big vision, but you can't take incremental steps, it's it's a quick way to not get anywhere fast. So the way I look at it, and I'm just still learning this, is kind of how do you balance those two forces that are at odds, but are both critical to building any kind of meaningful company.
Again, very well said. In the words of Oprah, you're just a tweetable. just going to get everything out in a tweet with quoting you. When it comes to that big vision, Brad, let's fast forward. It's 2025. You and I, we're having breakfast because that's your thing. I'm definitely not having yogurt and fruit. I'm having a big piece of cake, but that's aside. There's a huge cover story and very big headline about Common and what it's become. What's that headline? What's the picture on the cover?
Wow. It's a great question. And I think it really goes back to community. And it really goes back to building this community that is not just specific to an individual building somewhere or an individual city, but is about people moving between different cities and interacting with a variety of groups of interesting individuals in a much more seamless way than anyone working on housing as a problem has ever been able to facilitate. So there are a lot of macro things that are changing around today's workforce. People switch jobs more often, people move more often. Some people don't really want to be tied to any particular city, but still want to be plugged into a really meaningful and global community. And I think we're in a great position to provide that alongside, a really compelling set of services for people who are living in a given place. So I think that global community, and I always love the potluck dinner and kind of the image of the potluck dinner of everyone contributing in an inclusive way, and some picture of a potluck dinner, I would say.
I love it, and definitely not what I was expecting. That's a good one. I want to spend the last couple of minutes, Brad, just chatting about life. Going back to your breakfast tradition, what have been some of your favorite mornings?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say, nothing really beats Saturday morning, sleeping in, getting up, cooking breakfast, and watching TV with my wife. Those are still the most fun. And, you can't, I mean, you can't really compare that versus, going for a bike ride and, grabbing breakfast with somebody. I love both of them, but they're apples and oranges. So I think, I'm a big fan of ritual and tradition, and I prefer not to pick out individual breakfasts, but to look at my rituals effectively, is what they are, and say, well, those are the things I like, rather than a specific day or a specific morning, but rather here are the patterns and here are the things I like to do. So, yeah, I can't beat those weekend breakfasts.
When it comes to the weekend breakfast, what are you guys watching and what are you making?
Oh my God! So, she's been lately making herself a bowl of ramen, and I still fry some eggs. So make that, classic. And we watch one TV show at a time, crank it all the way through, end it, then pick up another one. So our last to get through was Twin Peaks, the old David Lynch show from the early 90s. And then before that, we did The Wire.
Love it. So Albert Wegner just shared a really great post yesterday, actually, about knowing your purpose. And I was so excited because I thought, "Man, what a great question to ask someone. What is your purpose?" So you're the first person I'm asking. What is your purpose, Brad?
Well, I think it goes back to what you said earlier, which is solve problems. I like I love solving problems. It's what I live for, and the bigger and hairier, the better.
That is a unique perspective. You recently tweeted that someone should build a reverse Google Maps. So I could put in where I am, how much time I have, and they give me a place to go. If you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you teleport?
Oh my gosh. I am anywhere. I spent some time in Vietnam this past winter, and I absolutely loved it. It was an incredible country with super friendly people and great food. So I would probably say Saigon.
Good choice. Good people, good food, you're set.
That's all you need. It's really all you need.
Last question. What's one question that you've always wanted to be asked, but nobody's ever asked you? It could be like personal, professional, athletic achievement from when you were 7.
Lord, I actually, that's a tough one. I don't know. I feel like people ask me a lot of stuff, most of which I completely are completely unexpected. I always like when people ask me about my first business, which I actually started with Matt Breimer, one of my best friends and GA co-founder, where it was his freshman, my sophomore year of college at Yale. We realized that Yale was getting rid of all of its old antique furniture, and that these were collector's items that were basically going in the garbage. And so we started buying all this antique furniture, beautiful like wooden pieces from the 1920s, and we built an online store and had an eBay presence, and
Oh, cool.
every Friday we would skip class and rent a U-Haul and go around buy furniture, and we had a warehouse outside New Haven, and that was still probably the most fun I've ever had.
That's awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for being with me today and for ending on that, because I think that's such a great note and a great story. Couple of things. How can everyone stay up to date with Common? And for those who are in the New York area, when September comes, what's the best thing for them to do to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, just go to hicommon.com. That's HICOMMON.com. And just put your email address in there, and we will be in touch when applications are open.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.